Usually with homeowners associations, we do something wrong, we get in trouble, and we get a fine. But today we're flipping the script. G'day there guys, it's your main man Markee, and welcome back to another episode of r/JustnoHOA. Just no homeowners association, we don't need them. Now if you love today's bloody good content, I want you to sit back, relax, chuck a prawn to the barbie, and get ready for this spicy story. Let's go. HOA got entire subdivision banned from pizza delivery. Disclaimer, I did not live in this HOA, but I did live down the street. Okay, so we're gonna set the Wayback Machine to circa 2000 on this one. Gas is cheap, cell phones were small, and my Ford Escort got amazing gas mileage. As the now ex-wife and I were struggling with our bills, she decided that the easiest thing for her was for me to get a second job trying to catch up and then get something into savings. Having seen this sign in the window of the local pizza shop, which was named after a popular game played with small rectangular pieces that was advertising for $12 to $16 an hour for drivers, that was a lie, she badgered me into applying. Fast forward a couple of months and I've settled into my mind-numbing routine of working 60 to 70 hours a week at 2 jobs. On this particular day, I was scheduled to work on Saturday, which was hit or miss for tips. You see, our delivery area was very nouveau riche, combined with scattered groups of Florida rednecks. You would have a gated community with McMansions and BMWs right next to a trailer park. Oddly enough, the smaller the house and cheaper the car, the bigger the tip, which factors into the story. On this particular Saturday, a local homeowners association was throwing a pizza party for the residents. I think they were celebrating the last house being sold, or moving the HOA from the developer to the board, or something. Anyway, they ordered a ton of pizza. So much so that the manager had scheduled extra kitchen staff and had them show up an hour early just for this one order. He even gave them a discount on the pizza since they ordered so much. There were so many pies that it took myself and another driver 2 trips apiece to deliver it all. When we got the last boxes of pizza delivered, the manager wrote a check for the total, which was a couple $100 and change, rounded up to the next dollar for our tip. So I left and went back to the store. The manager asked me how much of a tip that I got, to which I replied 87 cents. He didn't believe me, so I showed him the check. He then asked me if I was messing with him and if they'd given me a cash tip. Nope. He went off. He walked over to the phone, called the manager of the HOA, cussed her out for not tipping his drivers after he had discounted the order and scheduled extra staff just for her order, and told her that he was entering that entire subdivision into the computer as do not deliver. He then hung up, opened the cash register, and gave each of us a $20 bill for a tip. To this day, I have no idea if any of the residents were ever able to order from that store. Our next post is by user Free Range Feral, titled, "Get rid of my lady lair that came with the house? Sorry HOA, you approved the sale." When we bought our house, the largest in the hood and the original showcase home for the development, there was a shed in the backyard. My lady lair, if you will. The home sale was approved by the HOA and a letter of no violations was issued. All good, right? The home unfortunately came with scads of abandoned property. Within 24 hours of taking possession of our home, the former owners broke back in to remove what was now legally ours. A suitable story for entitled people. I stopped at the security guard shack to inquire about ensuring that the former owner's gate codes were inactivated and to keep an eye out for any attempt at continued entry into the gated hood. The guard assured me that he would handle it and I went on my way. That evening, the guard came to my home to give me additional info that I might need and offered security cam footage for the police. I thanked him for taking the time to make me feel safe in my new home, but before he left, he said, "Just to warn you, the HOA will go after you for your shed. They want it gone." After a bit more discussion, he informed the former owners were not only bat crap crazy, but had gone toe-to-toe with the HOA over the shed. 3 years and lawyers all around, the HOA finally said, "F it, this is costing us too much money and their lawyer is better than ours," and dropped the whole thing. Within 2 weeks, I had 2 different neighbors telling me the HOA would give me problems over the shed. Fun! At the next 3-week mark, an inspector from the county showed up to tell me he was investigating an anonymous complaint about code violations and the shed. Visible only if you stood on my property. Was in violation with the county as there was no permit for it. I was livid and already considering what avenues I had to keep my shed or win compensation for the loss of property when the code enforcer smiled a devious smile at me, handed me a printout, and said, "All you need to do is fill this out, pay $50 to the county, and you will be in code compliance." He then said that Mr. Little Man Syndrome, oops, cough cough, I mean the anonymous complainant, cannot touch your shed after that. The key here is that 4 years ago, when they were battling the former residents, the county did not permit sheds and the bylaws say all additional property structures require permits. If there is no permit, the HOA can order the removal and fine the resident until it is gone. 2 years ago, the county started permitting sheds and HOA was unaware of the change. I paid my $50 and got the permit, making my lady lair code compliant and untouchable by the HOA. I also made a new friend in code enforcement, and all is well in my 150 square foot slice of heaven. Now in the comments, Mamalicious says, "I love this story, but I must know. What did former owners steal and how did they break in?" And OP replies, "We allowed them a 6-week closing instead of the typical 4. On the day of closing, when the property and anything left in it legally became ours, they still had a ton of stuff in the house. In closing, we allowed them to use the garage until 9 p.m, so anything they wanted to claim as theirs needed to move by 5 p.m. into the garage, and then at 9 p.m. the garage door would be closed, and all property would be officially classified as abandoned. The next day they entered the backyard, crawled through the dog door, and removed items like lounge chairs by the pool, as well as entered the home and took things from the fridge. I chose not to go to the police about it because even though legally it was abandoned property and now mine, I didn't want to be that petty bear. In the same respect, entering my property and my home is unacceptable, and I contacted the real estate agent to forward the message that if it happened again, I would have the police after them in a hot second. I had a locksmith at the house at 6 a.m. to change all locks, and I padlocked the yard gates. Haven't heard from them since. Wow, that's so much better than I was expecting. I'm a realtor and had something similar, but it was over the course of 2 months. The buyers were moving from out of state, and there were repairs that had to be done to the house prior to moving in. Long story. Pipes were disconnected, appliances were damaged, things were disconnected that shouldn't have been, and best of all, there were axe marks in the walls. The sellers also had a bonfire in the backyard after the sale, according to the neighbors. Apparently they were mad about selling the house. They sold because they had a feud going on with one of the neighbors. Totally not the buyer's fault at all. Our next post is by user eBirdsL1, titled, "These people are absolute nutcases." I have to rant. We moved into a rental house, a really nice house, beautiful inside and out, a little more than a month ago. And we got a barrage of letters from the HOA on Friday accusing us of running a repair shop because we own 4 cars. I'm not kidding. 2 of my cars are actually magazine cars in show condition, and the other 2 are basically new. A Hellcat, Formula, Ram Warlock, and a Tahoe. They also noted when my mum came over, a 5th car. OMFG, no, the horror. They sent pictures of my driveway with the garage door open, and I can tell the pictures are taken from my neighbor hiding behind her car. I paired up the car and figured out who it was. These people know damn well these are our personal cars that are here full time. Another notice is asking for proof of weed treatment, but there is literally no weeds. They sent a picture that is so blurry, it might as well have been taken with an iPhone 3 from outer space. But there's no weeds. They also mentioned that the mulch needs to be piled higher, but we're one of the only yards that has mulch instead of bare ground in the flower beds. And it's clearly new mulch because it's not even a little washed out, and it's jet black. And the third notice was about the mailbox post being wrong, which looks like every other post and was here when we moved in, and I assume has been here for a long time. Oh, and the letter was dated for the 5th, arrived on the 13th, and demanded these issues be fixed within 10 days of the date on the letterhead, so it feels like a trap. What the actual fresh hell is wrong with these people, and how do I get them to F off? I'm following the rules. And update, so here's a fun twist. I talked to the rental company today, and they charge an automatic $45 fine tacked onto my rent every time they receive a notice from the HOA. I disputed it, but the lady on the phone was completely flippant about my concerns of getting charged $45 every time some busybody makes a fake allegation about us. With the market, I'm paying $2,300 for an average-sized 3-bedroom home for the sake of having somewhere to live, so I'm narrowly affording this crap anyway. I'm sick, and we have a year ahead of us? FFS. Now in the comments, Bamathon says, they probably know you're renting, don't like your cars, and are trying to make you uncomfortable so you'll move. And OP replies, yup, I looked up the people who live there, and they're like 1,000,000 years old, and the woman works for something with evangelical in the name. Which is fine, whatever, but I'm guessing they're offended that my car has a demonic cat head on it. I'm not even kidding. I've known people like that. Document, document, document. If you can show that it's religious discrimination that you're targeted for enforcement, they don't have a leg to stand on. And OP replies, I really wish I could prove that. I kind of want to go check the mail in a red cape to freak them out. Better yet, get a portable fire pit, and then late at night put it in the driveway, get your whole family to stand around it, and just have a nice family talk, but in low, menacing tones. Bonus points if you occasionally all make synchronized movements or wear identical clothes. They should be talking to your landlord, not you. Bingo. OP needs to be in compliance with the terms of their lease and be able to prove that to the landlord and any court the landlord might want to sue OP in. But the HOA can only really put pressure on the landlord, who is both a member of the HOA with rights, and not the person that these arshats have a problem with. It is possible they've already crossed a line into tortious interference, but that would be a question for the landlord to discuss with an attorney. And you're renting. You have no obligation to do anything ordered in a letter unless your lease specifies that you do. Don't do anything other than what is specified in your lease. Send the letters to the homeowner and let them deal with the HOA. And OP replies, yeah, that's where I'm at. I told them to send anything to my rental company, but then she rambled off something about cutting grass every week. Yup, we do. Sometimes twice a week because of how quick it grows. They are so condescending. It is sucking the nice out of me. Our next post is by user Rose of Sharon Cassidy, titled, My HOA just clear-cut a burrowing owl nest. So I've already reported them to the FWC, so no advice is needed. This is just event post. I've never had a problem with my HOA before. They stay out of everyone's business. My HOA has a nice park that our HOA fee, only $10 a month, funds, which is really the whole point of the neighborhood having an HOA. It's a nice green space with a canal, tennis courts, basketball courts, and a large open field. A breeding pair of burrowing owls made their nest there, and per Florida law, they protected the nest by putting up some caution tape. Annoying people have been letting their dogs into that area, which I posted a next door post complaining about and asked to stop whenever I saw it, but generally the owls have been fine and happy. They had chicks this summer, and I'm not sure if they've left the nest yet or not. On Friday, I was walking my dog and saw some landscapers in the area, so I turned around and walked the other way to give them space. Saturday, I took my dog out and saw that they had clear-cut the whole nest. I'm furious. Those owls are a threatened species and have state protections. Rationally, it may just have been a miscommunication between the HOA, the landscaping company, and the guys who actually do the work, but I'm still mad. I reported them to the FWC, and hopefully some action is taken and the nest is better protected. And our next post is by user Stoked for the Future, titled, HOA threatens to deforest your property? Threaten them back with giant swastikas. So I've shared this story a number of times elsewhere, but someone told me to post it on here, so here goes. My parents live out in the sticks, about an hour from the nearest major city. They were hippies back in the day and had taken to the off-the-grid lifestyle pretty well. They bought a bunch of land as an investment, but after half a decade it barely changed in appraisal, so they decided to live on the property instead. It ended up being where I grew up. After I moved out and started my own life elsewhere, a housing development moved in nearby, selling a similar lifestyle. They bought hundreds of acres and split everything up, building homes and selling them off to city folk looking for an escape. These lots completely surrounded my parents' larger property. Of course, they established an HOA and tried to get my parents to sign in and join a number of times. They put their little clubhouse right next to them and had a fancy entrance run right up alongside their property. Fast forward 5-ish years, my parents still have not joined. The neighborhood ended up being pretty successful, and the HOA is pretty loaded, so they added a church with a giant cross out front, a gym, a pool area, an outside theater thing, and a little park, but are now running out of room on their lot of land. Skipping over some details because this post is already long, basically the HOA board members were dicks to my parents this whole time. I think they were trying to get them to either join or leave to buy the land, whichever came first. They called their property an underdeveloped eyesore and tried everything they could to make their lives hell for no apparent reason. My parents kept to themselves and never bothered any neighbors. Latest updates, my parents gave in. They signed the bylaws and joined the HOA. I don't know why, they don't seem to know why, but they signed the papers and within the week had 4 letters threatening fines and fees if the parts of the property closest to their clubhouse weren't cleaned up, i.e. deforested. Being nature lovers, my parents didn't want their entire property to be grass and nothing else. They liked the woods, and my mum even cried about not being able to see the usual squirrels and birds from her porch if this happened. They felt they'd move before complying. However, they signed the agreement and that was that. When I visited, I read through everything and found some loopholes. One of them was a landscaping clause that had appeared in the last 5 years, long after every other property had cleared and cleaned of nature, requiring that each plant on the property be identified and pre-approved for removal before it can be removed, to preserve endangered species apparently. So I hired a botanist from the local college, $1,000 to come and identify the plants on the property and give a rough count, much better than $6,000 being threatened in fines. Only $2,000 was actually threatened, but reading through everything they technically could find more and ended up sending more fines later. 88 unique species identified, and by rough estimates, over 1,000 plants that fell into their category of requiring pre-approval. The next day, I set about sending them hundreds and hundreds of emails for each plant to be removed one by one. Everything from tiny saplings to 50-foot birch trees, most with pictures and the referenced botanist's report for verification. I got 2 emails back for approvals of small bushes before they stopped. I kept sending them emails. At least 700 were sent before one of the board members called my parents to talk about it. Instead of backing down, they offered to expedite it and to pre-approve everything to be removed. Not what we wanted, but I called their bluff and agreed. I explained this was perfect as I could now fill the property with giant swastikas even sooner than anticipated. What? Yes, I said. I would like to put swastikas on my property, and getting rid of the forest will make them more visible from the road, clubhouse, pool, and park, all alongside our property. I could even use the wood from the chopped trees to make a giant swastika the same size as their giant cross, which was 10+ feet. You can't do that. Well, that is discriminatory. My parents are Jainists, I explained, and the swastika is a holy symbol for Jainism and has been long before Hitler. Section 2 of SB 1588 allows any religious symbol to be placed on one's property, and the HOA is not legally allowed to do anything about it. Don't worry, I said. The swastikas will have little dots in them so people know it's not for Nazis. Even if it were though, First Amendment and all. And they said, let me call you back. They call back and say the HOA board director is going to come over and talk about it. We went back and forth for like an hour about what exactly defines a reasonable change on the property, but eventually he actually backed down. They agreed my parents' property could be grandfathered in and would stop sending letters of intent to fine about the forested areas. My parents still get annoyed with minor problems all the time, mostly related to trash days and their driveway, but it has mostly subsided. Moral of the story, if privileged power-tripping Karens are fining your parents for their lifestyle, threaten giant swastikas. Now in the comments, Don K says, well done, but seriously, why join the HOA? Is there any benefit to them? Either way, great story. And OP replies, I'm still not even sure. My mum said they showed up after she had a stressful phone call with her sister, family issues, and decided she was tired of being pestered, so she just sat down and signed it so they'd leave her alone. She didn't really know what it entailed. Ooh, I like to call that under duress, or perhaps taken advantage of. The word harassment also comes to mind reading the initial story. It should be possible to get it voided. A lawyer might be interested. I'm sure they could construct a very convincing case. Contract invalidated, any fees and fines refunded with applicable interest. A nice solid slap for the pestering. Then some actual harassment charges to ice that cake. Really make it pop. And OP replies, minor update here. I'm emailing back and forth with my lawyer friend. She thinks she can help us. I'll give a better update if anything comes of it. You bet she can 100% have her work on a backdate for a harassment suit if they refuse to let your parents out of the HOA. Because what they did is legitimately harassment, as the HOA either kept coming on their property, calling or mailing your parents. All of these fall under harassment, and in most states have a decently long statute of limitations on when they expire. I'd look into that too. Edit to add, and you can actually sue for not only the damages, but also for the cost of the arborist you had come out. And if OP sees this and needs help finding the necessary statutes, hit me up. I probably have them already. I have a long list of each state's trespassing statutes. Long story. And would you look at that, there is an update to this situation. After sharing these specific details about how and why my mother signed themselves into the HOA surrounding their property, many helpful Redditors pointed out that the circumstances qualified for signing under duress. Her sister, my aunt, had been in a rather nasty fight with her new husband that morning, and it ended in a fire in their house. Long story, won't get into it, but needless to say, my mother was stressed as hell when they came by to try yet again to get them to sign away their rights. I contacted a lawyer friend of mine who has handled a handful of HOAs in the past. She believes this qualifies as signing under duress as well, and within the week, came down to speak to their board dictator. His stance is that we had come to an agreement, having my parents' property grandfathered in and therefore exempt from lawn maintenance standards and fines, and that this verbal agreement after the signing of the documents, while not under duress, meant we didn't have a leg to stand on. Obviously that's some bullcrap and she wasn't having it. She told him she'd be filing paperwork that evening and he should plan to see her and my family in court. He was not happy about this. He had her over for dinner and talked quite a bit about our options. She loved my swastika idea and even encouraged it, which I was rather surprised by. So I started the next morning. I constructed a very crappy looking swastika after 2 days of hammering wood together, propped it up against a nice tree, and hung 4 Christmas ornaments in between them to signify it as a religious swastika and not a Nazi one, as I had originally threatened, and as would be protected under Texan law. Unsurprisingly, I was approached by the lady that initially got my mother to sign the bylaws, utterly appalled at what I was doing. I explained my reasoning and stance. clarified them to be Jainist views, and went about erecting my roughly 8-foot tall swastika in the front yard, perfectly visible from the road, the entrance to their clubhouse, out the windows of their church, and from their community pool. 3 hours later, the sheriff showed up to the property. I drove down to greet him. He only had questions, saying that he couldn't actually do anything about it even if he wanted to, and we talked for a bit. He was nice and seemed to side with my family in this whole feud that we had going on. Bits and pieces of events occurred for the next 2 weeks. Too much and of little significance to mention, but I'll run through a few. At least 8 Karens felt the need to walk onto our property to take pictures. I was there for and threatened 3 of them. I painted the swastika baby blue so it was more obvious. The HOA apparently had a meeting to discuss the swastika and what to do about my parents ruining the neighborhood. Big update just came a few days ago. My lawyer friend said she'd been in a constant back and forth with the HOA, trying to convince them to simply trash the contract rather than take it to court because they're gonna effing lose. Much of our leverage is the signing under duress, and the fact that the HOA has provided no services to my parents in any form, as they do other residents, although this is per our verbal agreement of leaving us alone. My parents do not use any HOA amenities. We even have a back road on our property to get out of our neighborhood, so they can't even argue that we're using surface streets. Short of it is, they frickin' lost. The dictator caved yesterday after they got a rundown of lawyer fees, and supposedly even their own lawyer said he wasn't confident in them winning it if it actually did go to local court, considering the current legal climate, whatever that means. We ended up coming to an agreement. 2 new papers were signed by my family and the HOA board. The first was them agreeing to nullify the original contract my mother had signed due to understanding she had been under duress due to familial troubles. The second was us agreeing to take down the swastika and refrain from similar religious signage, originally worded visual protest in the future, and them agreeing not to solicit on our property as we have no intentions now, nor ever, of joining their HOA. If they solicit again, the swastika is going back up permanently per our agreement. I want to give a major thanks to some of those Redditors that suggested I do this in the first place, and a huge thanks to my unnamed lawyer friend for helping us out so much with this. I know you read the first one and are reading this, so thank you, thank you for 1,000th time. I skipped many details, and she could probably write a book with how much she went through to get here. I'm very happy to say that we're back to square one, but an even better square at that. Anyway guys, I think that's where I'm going to end today's video. If you did like it, tell me what you thought about it down in the comments below, and make sure to just interact with everyone in this community. I love each and every one of you that I get to see on a daily basis. And don't forget, if you are a Patreon subscriber, I love you. You're on the screen right now with the YouTube members as well. If you see yourself, give yourself a pat in the back. You guys help me continue this YouTube journey. You keep me going. I see you guys everywhere. I see your messages, and thank you so much for supporting me. I really love every single one of you. But with that all said, I'm going to be signing off now, guys. I hope you have a good day, night, sleep, whatever you're up to, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye.